As we're doing any somatic mindfulness inquiry, of course, we tune into the physical body. Notice what's going on in your body right now. And as you're tuning into your body, notice if there's any sense of alarm or I don't feel comfortable, I'm not safe. Notice your experience in particular with your nervous system. Notice what's happening in your breath. Notice what happens when you put your attention on your breath. Notice your whole body from head to toes. And notice if there's any sense of tightness or contraction, if there's any energy or sensations. What's your somatic experience right now? Where is it? What does it feel like? One of the things we know about our nervous system is that it's a primitive part of our system. We share it with animals, other mammals in particular. We have fight, flight, and freeze. And then people, we often add looking at compliance, people pleasing, fawning. So the four F's that are becoming more familiar with now: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So when we're looking at how we protect ourselves from danger, some of them make a lot of sense, especially in the physical world. We have neuroception, which is our unconscious perception of threat. And when we have a sense that there's something dangerous, our nervous system decides how we're going to respond. And our nervous system responds with whatever the best option is in the view of the nervous system. We have a lot of ways to work with our nervous system responses, but we don't have a lot of input into what comes up. So that is an unconscious process. The perception of threat is unconscious, and whatever of the survival responses comes up is not something we decide, it's something that happens. So we use all of the experiences we've ever had in our life to ascertain what the level of threat is. So if we've had a lot of alarm in our system, and some of that is related to certain sounds or the look on someone's face or smells, certain experiences, environments, then our nervous system is ready to jump into action. So it's a pretty blunt instrument. It's not very nuanced. It's very fast. So a lot of the nervous system responses come in really quickly, way before we have a chance to really look at the situation and go, is this as alarming as it seems, or is it in fact something that's coming from my survival system? And then we all have our own personal go to. If we look at fight, flight, or freeze generally, we will usually try to get away from danger. So, flight is often the first one. If we can't avoid the danger, we'll fight, only if we have a sense that that would actually help. And if fight and flight aren't a good option, then we'll go into freeze. And then people add on the fawning or people pleasing, kind of compliance, which is another option, especially for social threat. Notice what you feel right now as you're sitting with just what I've been talking about in the last few minutes. I have a nervous system. I don't control or consciously decide when I'm threatened, and I don't control what kind of response my nervous system generates. And I have a history with my nervous system, both in my neuroception, my perception of threat, and in what survival response generally comes forward. With our neuroception, it's very much if we have previous experience with something and it's known to be dangerous, and our nervous system is going to be coming in with a lot of certainty, a lot of intensity, perhaps. So for me, I grew up in a home where there was no violence, no alcoholism. And when I went to bed at night, I knew that my body would be safe overnight. And that is a very different environment from a lot of other people. So my nervous system learned different things than someone else's nervous system would have learned with a different environment. So let's take a moment to sense into or remember, what did your nervous system learn when you were a child? What were some of the predominating messages? And if you want to keep your eyes open while you're doing this, we don't want to go back into the actual experiences. Maintain awareness of your body and your breath. What were some of the predominant messages or experiences that felt more dangerous? What did you learn about life through your nervous system when you were a child? One thing that might be coming up is a sense of powerlessness, that it's useless or futile to fight, or that the only way you got out of trouble was to fight, that the best thing to do was to be away from home as much as you could, to stay away from being detected. So, freeze is one of the ways that we avoid being detected or noticed. So almost from a few steps back, as though we're kind of doing a scientific study on what we learned as a child. What did you learn about what was threatening when you were a child? Remember to keep your breath even and smooth, especially if you feel like you're starting to go back into the past. Do some tapping on your forehead. You could open your eyes, put images into a frame. Notice your feet, your seat. Hold your hands. And then notice what was your predominant response. So we all cycle through fight, flight, freeze, fawn. But was there one that was more likely to come forward? And this could be from childhood, but also really up until today. What is your most likely survival response going to be if you feel threatened? You disappear, move away, cut people off, go into a freeze or a fight response. A fight response can take many different forms. We can turn against ourselves. So you might have a mean inner critic. You might rage to other people. Notice what's your likely go to when you feel threatened. And see what the roots of that were. Is that a childhood response? Is it something different that you do now than you did in the past? Notice that we all have ways of being more grounded, oriented to the present now. So, what are some of the things that you do now that are different than what you did in the past? When we were a child and something came up and we did whatever we did, we got through it to our adult life now. So, that's good. And what do you do now to come out of a response earlier or to offer yourself some other options? Do you normally go into like box breathing or do you do something physically vigorous? Do you go into some self compassion? What are you likely to do now in terms of helping yourself regulate? Let yourself do a bit of regulating, especially if you're starting to notice that your breath has gotten more shallow or you're holding your breath, or if your mind is starting to go off into something unrelated, if you're getting kind of caught in the past, whatever it is you're working with, you could do some breathing, hold your own hand, get up and shake your body. Do something to regulate your system again. One of the things that's quite common is that we judge or shame ourselves for our trauma responses or for our survival responses. It might be something like, I should have fought back, I should have said something, or I shouldn't have gone into a rage. Now I've said that thing and everybody's mad at me. I regret that I hurt their feelings. I shouldn't have stayed in that relationship so long. I must have just been in a deep freeze. I didn't even notice what was going on. Let's take a few minutes to sit with what are some of the words that you might use if you're shaming yourself or judging yourself or shoulding yourself around your responses. And again, see if you can take that step back so that you're observing or witnessing what's coming up. Remain aware in your body, that somatic awareness. And then bring yourself into kind connection with yourself. The truth is that we don't decide consciously what is a threat. All those times when people told us to chill out or whatever the messages were, that's not a fair thing to say. We don't decide what our survival response will be. If we were in freeze rather than fighting back or running away, that is because our nervous system, based on its experience, decided that was the best possible option. If you can bring in some closeness, especially if you find that you're judging yourself or that you have some feeling of, I didn't do that right. Could you put your hand on your heart or give yourself some kind break? Notice what that would feel like. Notice that even though our nervous system doesn't always get it right, in the sense of we have a lot of drawbacks from some of the responses we've had, see if there's a sense of, even when my nervous system is bringing up all this catastrophic thinking or all this energy, it's my system, it's doing its best to protect me, even when it's not very skillful. And then how can we bring our adult self into that? One of the ways we bring our adult self in is more accurate neuroception. As we notice that we're starting to get revved up somehow or shutting down, that we can bring our higher level self into the picture again and just, let me kind of work with this a little bit more skillfully. I could do some of these breathing practices that I know now. I could put the image of that thing in the frame, put my eyes around the empty space. There's all of those different tools that we have. And I could stop shaming myself. I could be kind, cultivate some compassion. In a moment, we're going to finish the inquiry. Notice that. Notice also if you were to run a recording through your mind of what the different things were that came forward. What stands out for you that you'd like to remember or take note of, maybe work with more? And notice what it feels like if you're to take a few deeper breaths. Become aware again of your physical body. Notice the energy, the sensation, thoughts in the mind as well. And then when you're ready, take your time over the next minute or so. Finish the practice.